Good morning, and how are you today? It's tubalcain, Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher, and this is part 2 of the restoration rebuild of the POSTEL die filing machine. I hope you watched part 1, and I accomplished quite a bit. It was a long video. I hope to complete it. Well, I am going to complete it in this one, but it's going to be long. I'll have to skip through some of it. But let me review what I've done so far, and then we'll get started. I've got a bit of a mess here, but I have primed and painted the cover and the main crankcase part. I'm cleaning out these tapped holes so that the adjustment screws will go in there. The paint is just a hair tacky, and I'm going to assemble this for the final time here presently. But I also spent quite a bit of time cleaning this up, and it's ready for paint. I'm still not quite satisfied with this. I think I'll run maybe even the orbital sander over here. There's an awful lot of machining marks on there from the original job, so this is never going to be great. I think black must have been the original color, and then it was repainted gray. I'm going to go out to the garage in a few minutes and wire brush this, get it ready to prime. It's not too bad. I think most of that paint will probably come off. There is quite a bit of oil here built up over the years, so I'll get that all off and cleaned and degreased. Before I assemble the shaft here, let me talk about the files and the chuck. Now the chuck here is the portion of the vertical member that actually holds the files. And this particular machine calls for files with a round shank. I've never seen this kind before, but they fit in there like this, and of course would be tightened down. And I really only have 3. The man gave me these when I picked this up. This one is broken off, but there's 2 good ones. You can see they're not very long. Now the type of file that I recall having in the Keller were Nicholson files. They came in all kinds of shapes, but this is the kind of shank they had, as I remember. And the problem with that is that it was very easy to get them in there cocked, left or right. This will stay vertical, so I think this is a good system. I'm not sure if you can still get these. And I recall that the Keller had a chuck that looked almost like the chuck on an old Delta drill press that was a clamp. I didn't like it, from what I remember. But the thing about machine files is, remember, they cut on the down stroke, not the away from you stroke. Well, I hope I can get some of these, and this appears to be, well, I'll measure it. I think it's 1/4 inch. Now let's find out right now. Not later. Yes, 1/4 inch shank, 1/4 inch hole. But I bought this at Menards when I first got this. And this is a file that goes into, I think, like a Sawzall or something. They had different sizes there, but that is not going to fit. I thought maybe it would, but I was delusional. It could be ground down to make fit, but it is not perfectly cylindrical. Where is a... This could be cut off, but your files cannot be tapered. Machine files are not tapered. Alright, let's put this thing together. Clean and oil everything, of course. Remember that at one time the only oil can in the house might be a woman's Singer sewing machine oil. Now somebody's going to say I'm a sexist. You watch. I hate that. But they know that I hate it, see. Alright. Remember, we got an oiler here and an oiler here, so that part needs to be assembled as such. And this machine obviously has to be oiled pretty often, and you wonder if the operator actually will do that. That's the problem. because there's no ball bearings in here. It's all friction bearings. I think I'll do it that way. And then I have to determine exactly where to lock this. That's kind of sloppy, isn't it? Oh, that's nice. Incredibly smooth now. No tight spots at all. I'm loving it, and I hope you are. Now this I can't understand. I don't know why there's two holes in here. I don't know if Bubba at the POSTEL factory did that or Bubba's nephew did it some other place, but I just don't see the need for the other one. I did find a chrome, kind of little gaudy ring-a-ding, but nevertheless. The whole idea is you don't want that to bounce around, but you can quickly loosen it as such. Lock it, and then squirt oil in there, of course, with your Eagle 66. Well, this was an abject failure as far as this is concerned, and I knew this before I started, but remember we got different cutting speeds here. There's virtually no cutting speed near the middle and, you know, significant near the outside, plus one side is working against the other, so yes, it was an abject failure. And originally I built this to sharpen knives and so on, so it's still good for that. Let's see how else I can approach this. And I did clean this up, I told you a little bit earlier, on the wire brush. I did not use rust remover on it. I don't know how this will work, but I haven't used this Porter cable, I'm serious, in 20 years. So I put a new abrasive on there, and then the pad fell apart and the foam is disintegrating, so I don't expect this to work, but let's give it a try. Oh, ye of little faith, Mr. Pete. It did an admirable job, not perfect, but it's good enough for who it's for. Boy, the base cleaned up nicely, didn't it? And all the gray paint just flew off. I'm not going to paint the bottom, but it's ready for primer. I've already degreased it. I probably will have to drill new holes here to line up with my motor base. And this primer has already dried, so I'll give it a coat of the final finish. And, you know, the primer dries real quickly, but that finish coat really needs overnight, so that'll all be painted by tomorrow. By the way, somebody said in a video He said, you got your knife laying with the blade upside down, you know, you're going to cut yourself. I never heard anybody say to, you know, make sure you lay your knife like that. I mean, it's common sense, but I just set it down, however. But since I haven't cut myself in 70 years, I'm not going to worry about it, but I guess that's the way to do it. And I don't much like these 3/4 inch screws. They just look ugly, so I got some brand new ones here, but of course I have to cut them off. I very seldom run across 3/4 inch long. I get 1 inch and 1/2 inch all the time, mainly 1 inchers, just tons of them. So I'll put those to use. Alright, I'm going to go over and paint. I won't show that. I'm not going to show any more painting. Who wants to see that? Perhaps some of you remember this old Westinghouse motor when I talked about it a few months ago. And the reason I talked about it is because this is a Petersen Products base. And the motor, I found this at my sister's house, was mounted on there, but it was mounted on with banded clamps quite nicely and quite firmly. I cut them off so I could show you the base. And this is one that I designed when I was in my prime. Boy, that's a long time ago. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use these large stainless steel clamps, and they're going to go around like this and around the motor. And this is not going to be long enough, so I may have to piece some other smaller ones together or double them up or something rather than go downtown. We're locked in here, I can't go anyplace. And then I need to rewire the motor, or at least put a better wire on it than this. No switch. There might be a switch later on, but that's the general idea of what I'm going to do here, but all off camera. Well, there it is, ready to roll. I hope the rotation is correct, although I'm not sure if it really matters on the filer. But, you know, I spent most of my life hoping and wishing. And it's uglier than sin compared to my nice, newly restored and painted filing machine, but it's going to do for now because I do plan on finding a better motor. So other than putting a new wire on this, it's ready to install when the paint is dry. So I'll see you tomorrow when we got some finished hardened paint, and we'll finalize the project hopefully. See you then. Stay tuned. See you in 1 minute, 10 seconds. Well, I'm back already. That was fast, wasn't it? And the paint is dry, and the product looks pretty good. Does it not? Time for a little reassembly. I'll start by putting the main crankshaft on the base. I told you that motor wasn't pretty, and I wasn't kidding, but I did rewire it with a 3-prong grounded plug, so that's ready to go. No switch. I need a switch on there, and I need belts. So I got all kinds of belts. I got hundreds of belts, and a 27 or 28 is what I did, so I got that. But these belts are so old that they are very stiff and lacking flexibility and limberness, so I don't like it. But matter of fact, I would like to use 3L instead of 4L, but then of course I'd need 2 new pulleys as well. Now this is a 4-inch pulley. I would like to have a 6-incher with a 5/8 bore. Do not. I'm going to go ahead and set this up. And I have to drill some holes, as I told you in here, to mount this. We still got some adjustment there because it slots. I had to move the motor way over on the base toward one side to get the positioning that I wanted. You know, I've got a bunch of motors that are in this side, but they're just overpowering for a smaller machine. And furthermore, all of the ones I have are 3450 RPM, and I do not want a fast motor. I want a slow motor. I'd like a slower one than this. So I'll be back in a half hour after I locate, drill, and tap some mounting holes. See you then. An unrelated question for you. Who was Betty Furness? The motor is mounted and the pulleys are pretty well lined up just with a straight edge. The motor is mounted, it's ready to test run. I suspect it'll be kind of noisy. As I remember, everyone I ever had or worked with was noisy. Perfect for filing my nails. I wish I had some rubber feet, some rubber isolators to reduce the walking around and the noise, vibration, and all of that. I'm going to try putting a couple of these, 4 of these sticky feet on there. I doubt that they'll stay on. Well, let me see what happens. Laugh all you want, but that made the world of difference. I doubt that they'll stick very long when this gets moved around, but I have tons of them and 3 more of these. And now to set the table square with the file in both axes. Of course, one may want it at an angle. That's probably most often what this is used for in die filing. We need an angle, but I want it square for what I'm going to do or for what I'm going to demonstrate. Working one of these screws against the other. Thank you, Stan, for these beautiful little squares. And now in this direction, we'll see if a light in the background works better than just white paper. Answer to the pop quiz. The W, of course, stands for Westinghouse Electric. Betty Furness was an actress, and she also was spokesman for Westinghouse, and later on the president's consumer affairs or something like that. I'm not sure what. That must be in the 60s or 70s. The belts and pulleys are, of course, incredibly dangerous without a guard, and I will build a guard sooner or later, but I really wanted to get the correct motor before I do that. But that would take your finger off in an instant, and I knew at least 2 men when I was younger that lost their fingers in belts, one in a car belt and one on a lathe. When filing on a die filer, you need to exert pressure against the file with your work. That often causes the file to flex depending on the shape of the file. For instance, a long one like this would flex almost like a bow and arrow. So some filing machines, such as the Keller, had a guide, and the guide would support the file. Sometimes it had a roller on it, but all of that apparatus made the machine very heavy and hard to move around. And generally, these are not dedicated machines that will stay in one spot, so you got to move them around, and they are heavy. I'll show you pictures of that in just a second. Furthermore, often the work, such as this, as you're filing, will start to do that. And I tell you, instant blood blister is the name of the game. So you got to keep your fingers out of there, but there are some filing machines that had a hold down, not unlike a jigsaw. And there it is. That's a die filer made by Keller that I had at the high school, similar to it. Notice the nice small motor. That's what I'm looking for. But you can see the hold down for the work, but that required this very heavy bracket and apparatus that added 20 pounds weight to the darn thing. And there's another view of a Keller, and that is a support for the file, to keep the file from flexing. The Kellers used a much longer file. They were made by Nicholson compared to what I'm using on my little one that I'm repairing here, rebuilding, restoring. Can you imagine how dangerous this is? If, for instance, there was a switch right here, a lot of them had switches right on the motor, and if you were working from the dangerous side here and not paying attention, you reach around, you know, fumbling for the switch, bam, your finger's gone. Okay, the restoration is completed. With your permission, let's give it a test run. Let's make a square hole out of a round hole. This is 3/16 hot roll steel. It would be better if I had a square file, but I'm going to use what I've got. I drilled a 1/2 inch hole and laid it out, and I will attempt to make it into a square hole. Remember, this is a finger pincher. You get your fingers under there when it starts slamming, and you will have blood blisters galore. No one ever accused these machines of being fast. I have seen these machines equipped with a magnifying glass, lights, a blower, the hold down, the support. I myself am wearing this, but you do need safety glasses in the event that a brittle file would break and shatter. I will finish this off camera because it's very time consuming. Well, I'm getting there. That's as far as I will go with this. But now let's do it in a piece of magnesium. Why magnesium, you say? Well, hopefully it'll start on fire and we'll have a little excitement. Needs a little more work, but not bad. Very slow going, as I told you. It's something you wouldn't want to work on all day long. And it did not start on fire, so I'm disappointed in that. So in order to redeem myself, let's do this. These are the magnesium chips left from drilling that hole. Pretty awesome. Boy, does that leave the ash. Look at that. Looks like it's snowing. I'm not totally sure what speed this machine should run at. This is a 2-inch pulley, this is a 4-inch pulley. And using those quadratic equations that I always wondered what they were for, I found out that with this 1750 RPM motor, I ought to be getting, 800 or 900 RPM here. So let's double check it with the Stewart Warner. About 900 RPM, which means 900 strokes per minute. I knew those quadratics were good for something. Because of the double tilting mechanism, I do not recommend lifting these, carrying it by the table. That stuff can get broken, and that goes for bandsaws and jigsaws as well, and disc senders. Well, that completes the restoration of the filing machine. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will have extra credit here. We're about at the end of the video, but I will be talking about the Dual Company filing machines in the extra credit for my better students, because you can see how really slow this is, because it's only cutting half of the time because of the reciprocal motion. So you really have to worry it away. I've used these before and am not totally enraptured with them. This is tubalcain saying so long for now. I hope you liked the very, very long video. This is extra credit now. This Dual book was printed the year I was born, 1943. And it has a section, it's quite a thick book. It has a section on their band files. Now when I was teaching and first came to the high school, we had a 16-inch Dual and it had the band file on, but it was already busted up and every piece ruined by the time I got there. So I tend to think of them as relatively delicate. This was an attachment for the bandsaws. Later on, Dual and Grobe made dedicated machines strictly for filing. And these bands came in a wide variety of different types of files and coarsenesses and shapes. Notice the position, that looks like my dad. The position the man is standing in when he files, not in front of the machine like when you saw. I'm not going to show you all that, but here's reference to all of the different kinds of files and the speeds and materials. So this was a wonderful system. If you could keep it up and running, it would have been so much faster and more powerful than a little die filer.